Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 405. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com. And we're excited to have with us the acclaimed and celebrated comic creator of The View of the Phoenix Trees, the internationally renowned Snake. Snake.
Hello. You're right.
How's it going?
Yeah, good. Long day in the UK.
That's right. So you're talking to us from over the pond right now, and it is, as of this recording, it is late for you. It's past midnight now, isn't it?
Yeah, as soon as this interview finishes, I'm going to bed. but it's okay. I've got some reserves of energy. It's all good. All good. Yeah.
All right. Do you got class tomorrow? Do you got work tomorrow?
Nah, yeah, I got work and it's early as well. So yeah, gonna.
Oh, geez. Okay.
I'll just go on autopilot. It's fine for the day. I don't care about my work. I care about comics. I care about my work.
See, exactly. So I got to say though, so Snake, you reached out to us about it was a few months ago, saying that you have a Kickstarter planned, and I said, well, unfortunately, I'm booked out, but what we can do is, like, if you want to come on after the Kickstarter, we're more than happy to talk to it. And I got to say, congratulations. You had a fully funded project, and you made it well past your goal for that. And your comic book is The View of the Phoenix Trees, an inspiring historic fantasy story about a Vietnamese family's struggle to stay together post-war. And if I recall this is loosely inspired by your family story.
Yeah, my grandfather and grandmother, and they're sort of living through the Vietnam War, a mass exodus from Vietnam in the 1970s, and then living in a camp in Macau for 2 years, and then finally settling in the UK. While because it's always fun to merge in some mythology in any story. I mean, why would anyone not do that? It also merges in like a parallel narrative of the Vietnamese creation story about Morgan Quaid and his fairy princess, and like those two stories kind of merge. So you got this absolute documentary style realism, which is very gritty, created by my artist Hernan Gonzalez and my colorist Damien Lefty, and then you've got that contrasted with Andrew Drillin's kind of like epic, over the top, stylized kind of mythological drawings to show the mythological aspect. So I wanted to kind of tell two stories at the same time and have them to contrast and be comparative to each other as well.
Well, because that was going to be my next question, is like, because you decided to blend kind of like an historical biography with elements of a Vietnamese folklore. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know much about Vietnamese folklore, so I apologize. So, but what's the significance of the Dragon King and the Fairy Princess tale in this story then?
It's just kind of like the idea is that my grandmother, grandfather are kind of, they share they're parallel narratives basically, and those two characters are kind of share very similar paths and journeys along. That's why I thought it'd be really good to tell these two different sort of opposing stories, but also like parallel stories that coalesce together. So yeah,
right. And so the comic, kind of tackles themes of war, persecution, and family resilience. What was the emotional journey like for writing this, intensely personal narrative based off of your family?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not very close to my family, to be honest, and just be honest, I mean, but the thing is, like, I always heard this story from my mom and my dad, and it actually allowed me. I did a lot of research into it. I interviewed quite a lot of people and a lot of like family relatives, and took a lot of sort of like photos from my mom and stuff like that. And that allowed me to connect with them a little bit better, to understand the history a bit better. I mean, it's it is sort of like a labor of love, and it was a story that I'd always heard, and I just thought it would be perfect for comics. Because you can do this as a film, but it would cost a fortune, and whereas you got like 40, 50 years, condensing down 40, 50, 60 years, condensing down lots of different locations. And then there's a fantasy element as well. So it just made sense, the comic medium, to tell it. And I worked in the film industry for a bit of time, so I was into films, but then I've completely changed my whole interest, and my main focus is now just with comics, which is what I love. So yeah.
And so what have you learned about yourself through this project?
I guess just where I come from and making a bit more sense of my family. Um, and but it's it's a it's an interesting thing because you can do as much research as you want, but then at some
Right.
point you have to just stop the research and just start writing. And the thing is, I don't know my grandfather at all.
Huh.
I don't know him at all because he spoke only Vietnamese. I speak only English. I can understand a bit of Vietnamese, but I'm not the I can understand my mom, but I'm not great with other family members because they speak a little bit more elaborate than my mom and stuff. So a lot of it is me using historical documents and interviewing, and that's realist stuff. But then there's also another half of this which is completely my own thing and made up because these personalities I don't know. I'm like my grandfather would just sit. My earliest memories of my grandfather is he would sit and he'd be playing mahjong and he'd be smoking. He'd always be smoking, always smoking. And then he'd just like look up and just smile at me, and I just smile back, and that was it. That was our relationship, really. So it's this weird sort of creative thing that's based on reality, but it's also kind of completely fictionalized as well. I kind of mirror it to one of my favorite films, which is Pan's Labyrinth. The
Okay.
idea, the split between the fantasy element and the brutal social realism. So
So your grandfather has a transformation from like a gambling loner to a family protector, and that's seems to be like central to the story.
mhm.
Um, what does that character arc say about the power of love and responsibility?
I think that character has a lot to overcome, and I wanted to sort of really, I mean, what all of us as storytellers are trying to do, we're trying to take our character and our audience on a journey, and so that was very important for me. That he is just this, he's completely the opposite of this family man to begin with. He is, and he's a fun, interesting kind of like character, but he's got no understanding of responsibility whatsoever, and he has to learn that on his journey.
Mm.
And both his wife, Lynn, helps him do that. His kids help him do that. The situation around him, the terrible situation that he's in, the obstacles against him, the war, the fact that the Vietnamese government are throwing out Chinese immigrants. My grandfather was from China originally, and that's why
Right.
a lot of people got kicked out of Vietnam. They became called the boat people because they just left on this mass exodus in boats. And so, yeah, and that's what happens. Change can only come from pressure. So you have to put your characters through pressure, extreme amounts of pressure. And I like what like Scott Snyder says. I listen to a lot of his teaching courses. The writer Scott Snyder, who does Batman,
Right.
who's doing the absolute Batman, and he says that quite a lot. That you really have to put your characters under pressure, and it was something I really wanted to do. Um, because then when they get there, when they overcome their obstacle, it's so much better and so much more interesting. The worse and um, the more difficulty there is to overcome those obstacles. I think that's important for a story. Yeah.
And which I find really unique too about the Kickstarter that you did, it actually has a soundtrack to that. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that? That's really cool.
Yeah, so I've done it with two. I've done it with another comic as well that's on the back burner, which is my publisher is also releasing another comic that I did called which is like a horror comic, and I made a soundtrack for that as well, just because some of the most interesting moments that I've ever read when I've been reading comics has happened when I've had an incredible piece of music on at the same time, and when those two things just work in synergy together, it's perfect. I remember having on like Tom McRae. It's like an indie kind of soundtrack kind of guy. I had that on, and I was reading Pride of Baghdad, and like my favorite song finished as I finished reading the comic, and it just got me completely in this amazing headspace for the comic. So I want to do that with my readers. I not only do I want the panels and the writing to put them into this world, but I also want them to have a soundtrack that will encapsulate that world for them. So I got a soundtrack artist called John Piper to sort of do kind of trip hop oriental music, which I felt really kind of summed up the mood that I wanted to go for. So yeah, that's going to be there, and there's going to be, and you can sort of scan QR code and then bring up the soundtrack, so you can just play it while you're reading the comic. And hopefully, each issue, because it's a 4-issue mini series, each issue will have a soundtrack with it as well. So.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
And I mean, even though the Kickstarter's kind of finished, it's still open. So if people want to give more money and they want the comic, a copy of the comic, then they can. They can just go on the website and do it. We kind of left it open because I knew I'd be connecting with people at Thought Bubble, so I thought I'd just leave it open for another couple of weeks. So yeah.
Well, hey there. If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep this show going. We love hearing from you, so any feedback is welcome. And thank you for being a part of our podcast family and for all your support. It truly means a lot to us. So as you mentioned, it's 4 issues long. Do you see yourself putting one out once a year, or when do you see the culmination of this story being finished?
I don't know. Yeah, it's a lot. Like I don't like doing Kickstarters, not because I love connecting with audiences and there being a personal thing with my backers and things like that. That is really good, but I hate asking for money off people because also I hate the idea of like having to wait around. I just want to earn the money and then just so I can just pay an artist and do it myself. So it. And my editor is running the Kickstarter for me. So thank God, because it's too stressful for me, and I'm not minded like that. I can write stories. I can write stories all day. I'll sit in a room for 18 hours. I don't care, and I'll write. But I can't. But it's a lot. I'm still learning how to do Kickstarters. So I'm not sure. And like my artist is really busy. He's got quite a lot of projects on because he's a really good artist. So hopefully I've got about 7 or 8 pages left of issue 1. Hopefully he said he might have some time in December to get that done. So you do those pages in December. I've got to finish off the lettering because I letter my work. I always letter my own work myself. And so maybe like late January, maybe early January, sort of that time I can release the first one and then get to the second one as soon as we can, really. But I've got this other comic that they're also publishing called Monsters in Your Head, about a little girl who creates monsters from her head and gets terrorized by them. Yeah. So we'll see. But I mean, it's an ongoing project, and kind of like I'm happy just to kind of give it the attention it needs when I can and when I can get the money to make it. I mean, I never thought it was even going to be made. So I'm really happy that issue 1 is on the cusp of being created. So we'll just see how we go.
And did you see yourself? What has your family said about this story?
Yeah, my mum and my dad are kind of interested by it. They keep sort of following it on social media, and then my extended family have taken an interest as well. So that's been pretty good and pretty interesting. And obviously, they've enjoyed that I've taken an interest in the culture and asking more questions and just reconnecting with people I haven't spoken to for a while, because my family live all over the world: Vietnam, America, Sweden, Japan, like all over, because they left the
Right.
Vietnam. So there's a couple of family members still there, but a lot of them are just scattered around the world. I mean, and a lot of different places in the UK as well. They've sort of set up as well.
So folks that are listening to this in a year from now, let's say it's they're listening to this message, they're listening to this podcast, and they heard about, and they'll be like, "Darn it, I totally missed this Kickstarter, totally missed this. Where the heck am I going to find View of the Phoenix Trees now that all 4 issues are out?" Because they might be hearing this one already. Where can someone buy this, a physical copy of this comic, in the next couple of years?
I will imagine that my publisher will be releasing it in American comic book stores, most comic book stores around America, and then also I'm probably going to import a couple of some issues back into the UK, and some of the main comic stores like Gosh Comics, Forbidden Planet, lots of places that like are the main stores in the UK. In London, I'll probably sell them there as well. And because I'm based in Manchester at the minute, I'll probably sell a couple of stores around Manchester. There's quite a few comic stores here, to be honest, as well.
Right.
So,
okay,
and
cool.
I mean,
So,
I imagine as well online as well, just because
right,
just in case
like a
people.
digital download, someone could
Yeah,
digitally download it if they need
yeah,
to.
because I mean, I don't buy physical comics anymore. I don't have the room, man. So I have to go digital anymore. So obviously, I want to give people that same opportunity as well.
Right. Now, so Snake, if people want to learn more about you and your work, where's the best place they could go to?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, Snake87SMW, and I can write it so you've got my socials in the chat.
Yeah.
That's probably the best thing. I kind of use it for work, so yeah, that's probably the best thing. I mean, if anyone wants to talk to me, then I'm happy to give out my email address. You can ask me any questions you want. I don't mind. And yeah, I've got Facebook as well, but that's my real name, which is Scott Matthew Watson. And I use that sparingly. But yeah.
Good. So you're telling me that you were not Snake is not your born name. That is not your parents didn't name you Snake.
No, it's just my writing name. It's just like, why
What?
not?
Oh man,
I
yeah.
call myself whatever I want. Why not?
That's the benefit of being a writer. You can call yourself whatever you want, huh?
Well, like look at Jock. Like that is definitely not his name as an artist, but he calls himself that. So I was like, all right, why not?
So Snake, you're gonna have to come back on then when you have your second issue out, and we can talk more about this. I am fascinated by the idea of, as you like deftly combined Vietnamese folklore with your own grandparents' history. That's pretty darn cool. And
And
that's pretty darn innovative.
and because it's becoming like a thing. I don't know, like Vietnamese culture. Well, I've got other stories that are about giant monsters, so I can just do normal stuff as well. But there's another comic that I'm just working on with an artist at the minute, and it's about these 3 Vietnamese spirits, but they live in the real world and the modern world, and they're running a restaurant, and they have a pet dragon, and their own sort of past traumas come up, and it's all about this. It's all about the chaos that occurs in this restaurant at the time. But I'm Afterlight Comics and a couple of other publishers have taken interest to it. So I was showing it around Thought Bubble, which is a UK festival recently, and people were interested. Hopefully that'll get finished soon, and maybe I'll come back on with that. You might be probably interested by that. I'll send you some pictures actually after this. So you can have a look.
Perfect. Well, hey, thank you so much, Snake. And like I said, come back on when you have your next issue coming out, your next creation. That other one sounds pretty fun too.
No problem. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you very much for having me, man.
Do you have kids, Snake?
No, thank God.
No. Well, yeah. Thank God. Yeah, they're a cesspool of germs.
Eh,
This is. I would say the one good thing about COVID was that I was able to um, for it's like for 2 years straight. I didn't catch a cold. I didn't get nothing
mm,
because we're all so sequestered.
yeah.
But as soon as the kids went back to school, this is the third time I've gotten some sort of like cold or something. So